In Unity's file browser, search for the weapons lab scene and double-click to open it. Your scene window will look similar to this. Now go to Window, Animation, Animator. If the Animator window pops up separately, you can drag it next to your scene and game windows to add it as a new tab. In the hierarchy, select the Patriot and open the Animator component if it's collapsed. Click on the controller parameter to have Unity show the file path for the AR-15 controller. Duplicate the controller with Ctrl-D and rename it to your weapon's naming controller. If you're making a manually chambered weapon like a bolt-action rifle, duplicate the sniper rifle's animation controller instead, and continue following along. Click on the controller you made and switch to the Animator window. The animation controller is where you assign all your animation clips you made earlier, and also determines how the animations transition between game mechanics. I'd recommend renaming the layer by double-clicking it. If you're making an advanced reload, go to the Parameters tab, click the plus sign and add a new integer called loaded ammo. This parameter determines when an animation will play based on the weapon's current loaded ammo count. It's how we'll determine when the player will do a partial or empty reload. Click on every animation state and assign the appropriate animation clip you made. Draw goes into unholster, idle pose goes into hip, your kick animation goes into kick, sprint goes into tuck, reload into reload, aim into aim, and squad orders go into their respective animation states. If you want to speed up or slow down an animation, you can adjust the speed multiplier here. If you're making an advanced reload, click on the transition from hip pointing to reload. Click the plus icon to add a new parameter. Set the parameter to loaded ammo greater than 0. Copy and paste with Ctrl-C and Ctrl-V to duplicate the reload animation state. I recommend renaming this new animation state and setting the animation clip to your empty reload. Right-click the animation state to make a new transition and point it to the hip state. From the hip state, make a new transition and point it to the new reload state you just made. In that new transition, add a reload parameter and a loaded ammo equals 0 parameter. Click on the transition from reload to hip. I'd recommend adjusting the transition time so that the blue bar only covers the very last part of the animation. Do this for both reload to hip transitions. I make the transition at the very end so Unity has enough time to register the motion done and reload done events of the animations. If those events aren't registered properly, such as being transitioned back to idle too soon, that could lock the weapon from firing after the reload animation plays. And make a transition from aim to reload with the correct parameters too. If you followed my looping sprint animation, you'll need to make a new animation state for the sprinting loop. Either copy and paste the tuck state, or right-click to make a new animation state. Rename the new state and assign your looping sprint animation. From the tuck state, make a transition to the loop state with a tuck equals true parameter. I'd recommend adjusting the transition so the tuck can flow into the start of the loop. From the loop state, make a new transition pointed at itself. Close the transition's end arrow entirely and add a new tuck equals true parameter. Make a new transition from the loop state to the hip with a tuck equals false parameter. For the transition time, this is how long it will take to transition from sprinting to idle. The quicker the transition, the quicker the player brings their gun back to the idle pose. The transition animation may be a bit jarring though, if the transition is too quick. This section is only necessary if you made a fire animation. If you made a fire animation that did use the additive reference checkbox during importing, make a new layer called Fire Layer. Click the gear icon to change the blending mode to additive. Create 2 animation states. The orange state won't be assigned anything. In the second animation state, assign your weapon fire clip. Make a transition from the any state to the gray fire state and add a fire parameter. I recommend adjusting the transition time to be none. If you duplicated the sniper's animation controller, replace the fire animation with the fire animation you made.